I understand that this is your 21st time hosting as Master of Ceremonies. How have things changed in the past 21 years? Have you noticed any differences?
Not really. The numbers are larger, of course, with the new programs at St. Clair, and both of graduates and those attending.
The first year, in 1967, when St. Clair College came on its permanent site, there were only 300 students, and now there's up to about 4,000. So that must make convocation a lot more difficult and a lot more time-consuming.
It is, but there are so many more people now involved in operating it. The registrar's office handles it in the organization, the administration of it, and it is a huge job. They're working on it months in advance.
How have people's attitudes or goals changed in the past 21 years? Have you noticed any change in attitude?
Not when it comes to convocation. It's like a wedding. It's important in a person's life, and everybody treats it as such. It's a day of celebration, but it's also a day of good times, good fun, and it's just a marvelous day.
Do you have any anecdotes of unusual or funny things that have happened in the past 21 years?
Oh, we've had quite a few. We had a nice occasion one time. We were up on the stage as we are, and one of our people sitting at the back was listening rather intently and was leaning back in his chair, such as mine, and he just kept leaning back, and gradually disappeared over the back. That was, nobody seemed to make a move. He picked himself up very quietly, came around, got back up on stage. It was very nice. Some people didn't even know he had fallen over. So it was an interesting one time. Owen Klein leaned over to me. This was out in the parking lot where we had it, and we had all these nursing students sitting down in one group, and there they were with the diamonds flashing up at us on a sunny day and just blinding us with this beautiful brilliance.
As Master of Ceremony, you're in charge of the events of that day, making sure everything runs smoothly. I understand that one year you had a problem with your guest speaker.
Yes, we had a few instances of that. One year the speaker, who shall remain nameless, was coming down from Chatham, got a flat tire on 401, and he was about 20 minutes late. Not that we knew it was going to be 20 minutes. So when I was told he was late, what I did was ask each person to speak very slowly, to stretch it out, to tell any little anecdotes, to make sure if there were prizes awarded that they were to talk about the prize itself. And we stretched it, and the man came in a bit breathless. We gave him 2 or 3 minutes to get himself together, introduced him, and later on checking, nobody knew what we had done. It was very interesting. We had a nice one at the Windsor Arena where we held our convocation one year. The then board member, who's now a member of Parliament, Dr. Howard McCurdy, was to be the guest speaker. And it was almost like a hockey game. Had about 30 seconds to go. He's late, he dashes, jumps over the boards, rushes up to the stage, gets on, gives his presentation. That was an interesting one. It was an interesting one year. I shouldn't tell the story, but we had a guest speaker. Again, I won't mention a name. And when the convocation was over, I was walking out. The president was walking alongside me with his wife and said, "Things went very well, things went very well." And his wife turned to me and said, "Who invited that speaker?" I didn't like what he had to say. And the president gave me a strange look, and I said, "Well, I did," which was a bit of a lie because I hadn't, the president had. So I took some heat from her, and he was very happy. So we've had some very interesting ones. We've had the lights go out on us, and we've had the lights go out on a person one time on stage. So
tell us about the one, and look at Paula when you're explaining Tell us about the one where you had to run upstairs and downstairs and upstairs and downstairs, and then you went out to
All right.
post and you were out of wind and people said you were nervous.
All right. Ask me if I've ever been nervous.
Have you ever been nervous?
I'm always nervous, but I try to disguise it. But I got picked off one year. We were holding it at the Cleary Auditorium, and in order for the graduates to come in the proper procession, they're lined up downstairs. So I was not only master of ceremonies, but I was chairman of the committee to make sure everything went right. So I'm at the podium checking out the PA system. I'm called to go downstairs. There's a bit of a problem. So I rush downstairs, a couple of flights it seemed. I figured that out. Rush back upstairs, make sure everything is on the stage is proper. I'm called downstairs again. I rush downstairs, come back up to the podium. This happens 3 times. Finally, everything is ready. I stay downstairs to make sure that people are out, the marshals have everything under control. I dash back upstairs. I just get to the podium as it's people are to be seated finally, and I began to speak, and I take 3 or 4 very deep breaths to make sure I'm going to speak properly, and everything went like clockwork, and it was a beautiful ceremony. And when it was over, I'm talking to somebody, and he says, "Mason, you were so nervous to begin with, I couldn't believe it." I said, "What do you mean nervous?" And he said, "Well, you were so out of breath." I couldn't explain that one. So.
For the past 21 years, you've seen a lot of changes in appearance. How has that changed over the years, and how would you describe some of the different looks over the years?
Oh, that's interesting. The old Western Ontario Institute of Technology, on which this college was founded, had a dress code. Everybody had to attend classes dressed in a sport coat, suit, or tie, white shirt. And the ladies, and we had very few of them, had to dress in appropriate manner. And a student showed up with no necktie for graduation. So we told him he couldn't graduate. And he said, "But I don't have a necktie." We said, "You do have one, we know that." "Well, I left it at home." Well, we wouldn't let him graduate. Somebody went home, lived close by, got him a necktie. So we've always had formality, if you will, at our graduations, the ties and the proper dresses and so on and so forth. But there's certain other things, like hairdos and a bit of makeup. You might see a male up there with an earring, which of course you never saw before. It's the people, when they come to graduation, the students, are usually dressed in their very finest. It hasn't changed all that much. I think maybe the hair, and that would be about it.
What did people look like when they were graduating in the late 60s? What were their appearance like?
Oh, the hair was longer. That would be about it, hair, especially for the male. Now it's going to be interesting this year to see the shorter haircuts, and if we could ever do some sort of a composite and just show the hairdos, it would make a very interesting story.
I think it would be interesting, though, to have them talk about, the women were wearing the bouffant hairdos and the mutton choppers, a lot of long mustaches, sideburns, long hair, and then do it in the 70s, where again really long hair in their eyes.
I remember the transitions. I don't remember them in the same way that you do. I can't go through it. Like a beehive hairdo was a big thing at one particular time.
I think that would be funny, and also you could tie it back, from the early to mid 60s, how the men look and the women look very similar today. They're all clean cut, short hair, and that. So it's gone full circle.
Do you remember those, Mason?
Oh yes. If you go back to the early 60s, everybody was very clean cut, if you like to use that term. And then we got into where the hippies had an influence on the world, and we did go into the long hair. We had turtlenecks. We had the long sideburns, and it's fascinating to see some of the people walking around this institution today and compare them with their pictures of those days. You couldn't even recognize them. Again, the ladies were into the beehives, if you like, the longer hair. Hairspray was big in those days to keep it in place. The mini skirt was a big thing in those days. It was a very little thing, really. Caused a bit of consternation in some classrooms and also on the stage. Fortunately, we had gowns that disguised some of those problems. Today, we're back into the more clean-cut look, if you will, although spiky hair is in. We haven't run into that. We haven't run into the colored hair yet on stage. And the necktie is still the way to go for the male.
He's so cute.
Isn't it? Thanks, Mike.
You want some more
wonderful.
stories?
I didn't know how many you had, so
I got all kinds.
Actually, that'll
Okay,
do it.
let me give you a couple more, because there's a couple of interesting ones here
Okay.
that I do want to mention, because some people will be upset if they're not mentioned,
Okay, but
Okay.
look at Paula
All right.
anytime you want.
right?
Go ahead.
One of the interesting things that happened one year was because of the good planning we sometimes have at St. Clair. We were holding the graduation out on the parking lot. So we had the parking lot repaved so that it would be nice and black and very good looking. And we put out the chairs, which are like bridge chairs. Turns out to be about 95 degrees that particular day. And it was fascinating as people would be sitting there slowly sinking into the parking lot, one part of the chair and another part of the chair going into the blacktop. That was also the year that we had Darcy McHugh, was then an MPP representing Chatham, as our guest speaker. And as he looked out, see people sinking into the parking lot and 95 degrees, he happened to have a speech, so he claimed, of about 20 pages. So he just took it and tore it in half and put it down and then gave a very short speech to great applause, But that was an hysterical particular time. One of the interesting ones, I was introducing this gentleman, and I thought a flowery introduction would be lovely. So I talked about his university degrees and the marvelous job that he had, and I spoke about how erudite he was and a scholar and what have you. And I turned to him, he came up, and he said, "Thank you, Mr. Macdonald, I appreciate that very much. I'm very sorry, though, that my mother wasn't here to hear this. She's the only one who would believe any of that." And it did get a great laugh from the audience. We've had some good people as our guest speakers over the years, and it's been very interesting for St. Clair College. One of the interesting things that's happened over the years is Kevin Bunt and Arthur Whitey, the organist, Arthur, and Kevin is a big man. He comes in his kilt, and for years they've been doing the music for us. And it's just marvelous to have the pipe come in, and we're piped in and we're piped out, and it adds a tremendous amount to our convocation. And one of the most recent things that's happened at St. Clair that people should be glad to hear is we're now accommodating people who are disabled, people in wheelchairs, and it's totally marvelous to see these people coming across our stage, getting a piece of paper from St. Clair College.